So, are there any questions from your discussion groups? Any questions pop up? Wants to clarify? Okay. What do you think the answer would be? What do you think? I mean, you could say the same for anything. What if... Yeah, it's a good question. So what do you think? Just extrapolate based on what you know. You've had quite a bit of experience. What do you think would be the thing you have to hear? That's right, it is. It's a brilliant way to be about you. We spent eons of time doing the things that harm us. About time now we're starting to do things that are good for us. How can that be bad? What an intelligent step forward. You've got to do this one first. You see, this is the point, Jane, and maybe that clearly hasn't come home yet, and this is the one, thank you for asking. The point is, as His Holiness says, you cannot have compassion until you've got renunciation. And renunciation is exactly the one you saw. So if you don't get that one, you can never ever move forward to compassion, which is the real one that gets you enlightened. Impossible. Because until you know that the suffering is so disgusting, you have to be revolted by it before you will change. When you know the depth of the suffering and its causes, that is the exact basis of you having incredible compassion for other sentient beings. Because their suffering is unbearable, and now you know why their suffering is because of their karma and their delusion. You cannot have that until you've got renunciation. That's why compassion is university and renunciation is junior school and high school, for that literal reason. Can't escape it. Anybody else? Yes, Al. You see, I think that's the point. Pain is not an absolute. It's not a dependent arising. So I think if we analyse it, there's still a physical body with the same nervous system as you and me, but because their mind is so advanced, it's not as if they do secret magical things to deaden the pain. They don't need to do that. I think the literal reason why the pain is like virtually nothing, it's as inconsequential as a leaf falling off a tree, is because the depth of the compassion and the awareness of egoism. That is what literally causes it to just be a meaningless event. I think it's like that. It's because there's still technically pain, but we can see the more neurotic you are, the worse you experience that pain. Isn't it? What's the story? And who's the Tirthika? What kind of level of... What is he? Hindu something or other? Is he? Right. So, sorry, who gave whom an eye? Or gave him his eye? Oh, he asked him to give us his eye. Okay, yeah. Well, but then, if I suppose, so the logical explanation is the level of the realizations of the mind, isn't it? I suppose it comes along with that level of mind. So, but I think still the fact they've got that physical body means they've got the same nervous system as you and me, with the power of their mind. Has to be. I know, exactly. And the thing I feel, it can't be, that for that level of bodhisattva, clearly has to be Arya bodhisattva. It can't be bodhisattva who hasn't realised emptiness yet, I don't think. Unless the compassion is that fantastic. Because still, as long as the assumption of an I stillness and grasping, isn't it, clearly? Someone else? Anybody? Anything from your discussions? Yeah, no, not a hand. No, okay. So we were talking about transforming problems, which is this level that we're at in the context of this exchanging self for others method of accomplishing bodhicitta. In this whole approach called Lojong, coming from Atisha, who got it from Solinka, who traced it back to Shantideva. This kind of radical approach to getting bodhicitta. So the key to transforming problems, like we're saying, it's just a way of talking about welcoming the things we'd normally not welcome. It is basically, essentially, when attachment doesn't get what it wants. That's what a problem is, by definition. Now, of course, the only way we can understand that is by understanding attachment back in high school, understand karma back at junior school. It prepares us. Then go to this much deeper levels of attachment. And this is the thing, we can see you give up so many things. You can really be very renounced, not need many things, be quite steady in your relationships. But this really sort of gut level of attachment really is completely to do with just the yearning for comfort. Yearning to get nothing, and even you have to want to be rich. Especially I think the mental ones, for praise and approval. Praise is hearing yourself, your name said in nice sentences, and approval is this deepest ingrained one, attachment to reputation. And I think it sounds kind of nice and professional, attachment to reputation. It's attachment to how people think of you. And we can see loneliness, hopelessness, life is not worthwhile. Reading a bit this Newsweek article about people who commit suicide, research this particular guy did, and much of it is to do with feeling people don't love you, needing to be loved by others. One guy even wrote it in a suicide note on the way to the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco to kill himself. I am walking to the bridge to kill myself. He said he made a vow that if anyone smiled at him on the way, he wouldn't jump. He jumped. Now, I'm not being cruel here. I have to say that first because it sounds so harsh if we analyse it like this. But as long as we look into that part into our mind, then we can talk about it personally. And we all recognise that part of us. And the terrible feeling that other people don't love us, and that therefore the logic is that I'm nothing. It's simply wrong logic. And this is the depths of this need, this assumption in our mind that I'm worthwhile if other people see it. This doesn't mean that being kind to others isn't valuable. We can see how incredibly valuable it is. Actually, I remember sitting in Starbucks one morning early in Santa Cruz, on my roads, and a woman came up to me. She said, I've been feeling suicidal this morning. Seeing you, a Buddhist nun, it made her happy. It did something for her mind. It wasn't personal. I happened to be wearing my robes, So we can see how desperate people looking out there for it. This is what attachment is looking out there. I'm not saying we can't understand why we have this despair, because it's our culture. We don't know how to feed the mind. We don't know how to get self-worth. We don't have methods like this. But the tragedy is you all assume it's normal. So this is why these methods seem so simple but so profound, And they really do demand courage, because you've got to grow up to realise it's up to you. It seems so cold and harsh, like as if you have to be lonely. No, that's not the point. Because the incredible irony is, when you are content within you, which is the consequence of not having attachment, then everybody adores you. You can't keep people off you if you're like that, I'm sure. People adore you because you're not needy. Therefore you're not sad. Therefore you're not depressed. Therefore you're not self-centered, which is one of the consequences of that type of sadness. it has to be more subtle than that, because one guy, I remember one of the cases, because God knows what causes people. There must be many other things too. Because this one guy had his father, really powerful, blah, blah, this kind of father, the least person you'd think would be depressed and want to kill himself. And they found his body, he'd ripped his stabbed, he's trying to cut his wrists, and it didn't work, and he stabbed himself in the heart. Now, I mean, that doesn't sound like just depression, it sounds like intense anger, doesn't it? And you see, this is something else interesting. I have to say this. I don't know what we think about all this. But one of the, as we talked earlier about one of the realms of existence, the spirits, who are absolutely like oneness with attachment, and they're born with a subtle physical energy like of air energy, and the thing that propels them is this craving, raging attachment. Now, some can be very powerful and very harmful beings. They call them like demons and things. There's all kinds of classes of spirits, you know. And one of them is they harm people, including kill people. So there's one story about one of our young geshis at Purify Monastery who was seen to jump off the roof and kill himself. And according to one of the lamas, you can take this as you wish, he was pushed by a spirit. So this could be easy. I mean, a person who's a regular guy suddenly rips his, stabs himself in the heart so fiercely. You can't imagine what possesses people's minds. And this is not something inconsiderable for the Buddhist approach, this possession and harm by beings called spirits. And of course in this crazy, crazy deluded world is where they'd run rampant. And like I said, those babies who just die. Can you imagine the torture of those mothers who get accused of murdering them? That's the kind of thing spirits do. Because little babies are vulnerable, they just sit on top of them and they kill them like that. No medical cause. No one can possibly imagine why. This easily would be the work of spirits, the way harmful spirits harm sentient beings. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if suicides, a lot of them, maybe of the 800,000 a year in the world, who knows? This fly is my friend every single day. He just lives here. I must smell or something. I must like my smelly hair. Yes. My opinion, ridiculous. It's called pride. I mean, I'm not being horrible about the Japanese. I have to always defend. As soon as I say I'm not being mean, I proceed to be mean, I mean, I just think if you look at it analytically, without being cruel to people, if we look at these things in like as a little kind of study for our own understanding of how the mind works from Buddhist point of psychology, Buddhist point of view, then if you look at that, if you hear them talking, it seems to me a huge pride, reputation, attachment to reputation. Look at it. Attachment to reputation. You've become unsuccessful, you've lost money, and you've been accused of something. Look at ordinary people. One of the reasons people kill themselves is because it's just, you've lost all that. Look at that poor, one of those, remember one of the guys, one of those French guys who invested masses in, what's his name? The scheme, Ponzi scheme. The famous fellow. Madoff, yeah. I read all those Madoff things. I was fascinated. So invested in Madoff, one of the big investors, a French investor, all his clients were like the royal families and the aristocrats of Europe, He wrote polite letters to everybody, locked his office, put his feet up, put the bins beneath his legs, and bled himself to death. Because of the suffering and the pain of the reputation. And of course, probably mixed with compassion a bit too, but unable to bear it. So my feeling is many of them, you look at those, people because you can't bear it. You can't bear you have to be put to prison for 20 years. Or you have to be accused of something terrible, like that's a common reason people kill themselves. That's reputation. That's for sure is attachment to reputation. You want to analyse it, mixed with strong pride. I would suggest, yeah, and then it becomes cultural. What's cultural mean, but entrenched within the culture as something normal? It still comes down to being psychological, doesn't it? Everything is. Pardon? Who? Oh, do they? Okay, I don't know. Yes. 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 That's right. Yes. Gosh, yes, the Tibetans are big on that. Yes. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. The first thing I do is I consult one of the lamas I know and for them to check with their divinations and things to see if it is spirits harming. I mean, many people email me, and then lately, I can think, or regularly happening, 2 or 3 people I'm thinking of, you seem like completely overwhelmed by these spirits of healing voices, all these dramatic stories and paranoia and, all these things. So yes, it can be sicknesses sometimes. I always consult one of the lamas. I mean, if you wanted to, you needed to get an email, I'd give you an email at our monastery if you wanted to do this. Absolutely. You got a pen there? I'll tell you. Our monastery, okay, so, yeah, okay, yeah. So it's copper, you know Lama Zopa Rinpoche or not? Lama Zopa Rinpoche? No? Lama Zopa Rinpoche? No, you don't have to worry about him. I'm just saying if you know that name. He's the boss of this monastery, this centre. Lama Zopa, he's my teacher. And his monastery is in Kathmandu. And there's hundreds of monks and nuns there, and there's many of those lamas whose job it is. People are emailing all year round, getting pure pujas and prayers done, and this is one of the things they check up on. So oh yeah, gosh, absolutely, you can, definitely. So you email, so Kopan, Kopan, OPAN, at mail, MAIL, .com. Oh no, hang on. .np, not .com. .np for Nepal. Kopan at mail. I'll check it up. I can check it now. I'll just tell you. And then the monk you write to is Sangye, Sangye, Venerable Sangye. You say, Dear Sangye, would you please ask your Geshe, the Geshe who does the observations, the Geshe, the Geshe who does the observations, to please check if there are spirit interferences with my friend or sister or mother, father, husband, myself, name. And if so, what practices would he recommend to have done to remove the spirit interference? So he would recommend some pujas at Kopan, if there are, and say it'll cost you this much, you have to make this donation because it recovers the tea and the this and the that, and they kind of quantify it, You with me? Okay, so, go on. No, you don't need to. You can do that private business. Then you can decide what to do with it. So, yeah, it is Kopan at mail.com.np. .com.np. .np. Kopan, yeah, Kopan, it's Kopan Monastery. You can, Kopan. If you look online, Kopan for no one. And it's Kopan Monastery, a big monastery in Kathmandu, one of the main ones. And it's the monastery I'm connected to, with my Lama. You understand? Okay, good. So Sangye is the monk, Venerable Sangye. So you say, I told you, mention my name. So, yeah, this is said to be, of course the Catholics would say it's the devil, just generally it's the devil. But the Buddhists would say it's this realm of existence. We were telling many of these stories like a few days ago of what spirits can do. And it's a very common thing in terms of illness, in terms of disasters in the world, people killing themselves, killing each other, people crazy. Commonly among Buddhists, they would say. Certainly the Tibetans are big on this, understanding this, that spirits, very common. Right. Anyone else? Any questions? No? All right. Plus side. Of what? A spirit by definition is a lower realm, intensely suffering, dominated by attachment and often the wish to harm. By definition, the word spirit refers to them. There are lots of beings pervading the universe, many in human form and many not, who are indeed high beings. Yes. Which one? Spirit is here in this context is referring to a very suffering lower rebirth, according to the Buddhist view of things. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. We discussed all this. No, please don't worry about that. We discussed this. It's okay, really. I mean, yeah, it's fine. So, according to the Buddha, there's this whole spectrum of possibilities of rebirth. Trillions and trillions and trillions of minds sentient beings, mind possessors. The term in Tibetan is translated as mind possessor. Trillions of minds or consciousnesses pervading space. And they're all occupying some kind of realm of existence, is the way to say it. Because, and they're all experiencing those realms of existence in their own experiences due to their past karma. Buddha would say this is the natural law that runs the universe. That every sentient being, every dog, every rat, every human, every hell being, every spirit, every being is experiencing the fruits of their past intentional actions. This is the law that runs the universe for the Buddha. It's not judgment, it's not reward, it's not punishment. There's no person up there pulling the strings, making it happen. And so within the desire realm of sentient beings, which has 6 kind of levels of being, infinite numbers within each of these, The God realms are the top, the result of masses of virtue. There's not much use to these realms of existence because you're just in bliss for ages and then it all ends up. The petrol tank runs out and you've got suffering again. A couple of those. Then you've got humans, which is a result of virtue, but enough suffering in it to make us give us a wake-up call, which is a reasonable birth to have, because then we can practice. Then there's the animals, in vast numbers of them, we can see that. As many as probably 7 billion mozzies in one afternoon in your backyard. So it's obviously easier to get an animal birth. Insect, creature, worm, slug, fish, giraffe, dog, you name it. Trillions of them, it's clear, trillions of them. Predominant energy of ignorance, and therefore masses of attachment, masses of aggression. The key thing to remember is Buddhist psychology, the model of the mind, as we've been discussing repeatedly all these days, according to the Buddha, is referring to all sentient beings. Then you've got further down the spectrum of suffering, and even more occupied is these spirits, all grouping so many kinds, super powerful ones, demonic ones, intensely just pathetic suffering ones that the human realm have connection with, like I said, that harm humans, possess people who hear voices, possessed by spirits much of the time. These babies, people harming themselves, killing themselves, harming others, weather things, huge weather things, some of these powerful, powerful spirits. Many sicknesses caused by spirits interfering, things like that, spirits. And then there's the hell realms, all kinds of them. The most suffering of all, predominantly anger energy. 3 main delusions, according to Buddha: ignorance, attachment, and anger. So these states of being predominantly connected to those states of mind and all intensely suffering. Therefore only can create negative karma. Impossible to do anything virtuous. Maybe, domestic animals might do some virtuous things sometimes. But because their minds are so full of ignorance, it's rare. Humans even, because we're so run by delusions, run by attachment and aversion and aggression, most of the virtue we create is very weak. Very unusual for us to create very powerful virtue. Just look at our own lives, It's easy to be virtuous when people are being kind to you and things are going well. But the minute someone's even slightly mean to you, look at our mind. Look at our unhappiness. Look at our hurt, our jealousy, our depression. It pops up so easily. So to really practice virtue that's untainted by delusion in the face of the worst things happening, that's the real sign of progress. So this, finish this last verse of this 8 verses of mind training, as we call it, undefiled, we said it, by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns, these subtler levels of attachment. Because before, the people who came today for the first 6 days just totally drowning in the suffering of attachment we have been discussing it, So here these subtler levels of the way this delusion, as far as Buddha is concerned, effectively the main neurosis that runs us from life to life. And this is what makes it so hard to distinguish between attachment and virtue, attachment and love, attachment and compassion. We're very mixed in our attachment to get what we want, pollutes any of the virtue we create. That's why it makes it quite hard to distinguish between them, because what we have to learn to do. So then, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. So this illusory business is very interesting. They kind of throw this, we bandy this word around, you know. Oh, it's all illusory, we'll say. What does it mean, actually? It's utterly related to emptiness, obviously. So one way to say it is this, you know, in relation to, like we discussed, the way Buddha describes and the way Tsongkhapa works with the two truths about how things do exist. So we have things that exist conventionally. The reality is there is a cup, there is a road, there is a toilet, there is a shop, there is a knife, there is a you, there is a me. All these separate, distinct phenomena that have their own function. In order to have a reasonable conversation, we need to be very clear about these phenomena. You know? Discrimination, distinguish between them. Things have a distinct conventional truth, a reality. And then, of course, that same thing also exists ultimately, as they say, insofar as there is no inherent cup, inherent knife, inherent this, inherent that. No thing from its own side in that thing. So it's getting these two together that's tricky. So the classic way they would talk about it is in meditation, you would meditate on the emptiness of the thing. And then in daily life, you would practice seeing it as illusory. So there you are, you're in your meditation, you know, the great yogi, and you've gone to subtle meditation, and all there is the appearance of emptiness. So when you wake up in the daily world full of things and thises and that's, the practice to not grasp that is really big, because there it is, appearing like a self-existent cup, self-existent flowers, self-existent iPad. So a practice in daily life, which sounds kind of casual, but it's quite strong, is to see it as illusory. And this is hard for us. It sounds a bit mystical. What do you mean see it as illusory? It's a cup there. Give me a break, you know. A cup is a cup is a cup. Make up your mind. But what's the point? The point is this. If we can think of a spectrum from normal, ordinary, samsaric ignorance, you wake up in this life, you float along, you follow your assumptions of attachment and anger and pride, you grasp yourself as permanent, you never think of anything, you're not conscious, you don't, as Lama Zopa said, you don't even know your mind plays a role in life. That's the normal, and I'm not talking about Hitler-type people, I'm talking about regular Joes like you and me. Ordinary, ignorant, asleep person, which is the way Buddha would talk. So that's the kind of person you wake up in life, you want a hubby, you think you're married, you fantasize about it, and you go and put it online, you find a boyfriend, you go out with him, you go home, you talk to your children, you talk to your sisters and brothers, and you gossip about your girlfriends. And there's a very small, I'm not being mean, you've got a small mind, small life, nothing's very, you know, just to get married, have babies, or don't get married, don't have babies, or whatever it is that, you know, turns you on. But there's no real awareness of anything in your mind. You can badmouth everybody. You absolutely know you're suffering because that boyfriend left you. You absolutely know you're happy because that boyfriend loves you. We never question all these things. Join the club, folks. That's us. So from that ordinary daily life, ordinary materialist view, mummy made me, daddy made me, go to the therapist, work out what the problem is, my genes are wrong, my DNA is wrong, my chemicals are wrong, take a pill, you know, do this. Ordinary world, ordinary materialistic world. Maybe you're quite a reasonable, nice person, not some kind of monster. But there's, in Buddhist psychological terms, that's the spectrum here, from this end here, of ignorance functioning, the ego grasping, completely assuming there's a self-existent me, completely assuming there's a permanent me, assuming that getting attachments wishes is what happiness is, assuming that, you know, when it doesn't, it's called suffering. All the normal things of ordinary life, ordinary daily life that we don't question. Absolutely at the level of assumption. Never thinking your mind plays a role. And for that ordinary person, which is us, until we start changing, everything appears, as the way Buddhism put it, as absolutely rock-solid real. There's no talk of anything different. There's no thinking of maybe seeing it from another perspective. There's no possibility that maybe it could be this or perhaps this. Maybe I'm not seeing reality as it is. There's no talk of this. It's just everything's rock-solid real. So then we, let's say, start to listen to the Buddha's teachings and we think, it sounds interesting, perhaps I can look at my mind. What a fascinating idea, mind-boggling actually. To think, wow, maybe my mind plays a role, So then you start looking into this, and in the beginning you hear the nice theory and it sounds great. Oh yeah, I'm so attached, oh I'm so angry, I'm so jealous, oh yeah, I see everything is so grasping. But you still do the same thing, but you're beginning to look at it. That as you keep moving in this internal job, there's still cups in your life, there are still boyfriends who are mean to you in your life, but you begin to see it differently. It's less rigid, it's less rock solid. You're able to work on your mind and interpret the experience differently. And so really what you're doing is the more and more and more you see that everything comes from your mind, which is really what you're doing when you're seeing emptiness, the more you're seeing things from a distant perspective, which is, dependent arising, the more you're letting go of blame and attachment and anger, you're loosening the grip of all this solidity. There's still cups and boyfriends out there, but they appear less solid, less absolute. You see them differently, and that's what illusory means. It's not so rigid, absolute. It's like fundamentalist mind. Over this end is fundamentalist. A cup is a cup, and a cup is a cup is a cup, and it can never be anything else. A mean husband is a mean husband, period. But as you move along, you start to factor yourself in. Well, maybe there's some dependent arising going on here. Maybe there's some past karma. Maybe I'm a bit of a mean person actually. Maybe I'm a bit jealous. You start to factor yourself in, so it seems more complex all of a sudden, and less rigid. That he is bad, it is nice, this is wrong. From its fundamentalism, rigidity, to more spacious, until eventually, as Lama Zoda says, which sounds pretty cosmic to us, when you finally know directly the emptiness of the cup, the boyfriend, the me, the you, the flower. It's as if there's no cup, me, you, flower, but there is. But what does exist is so subtle. It is as if it is an illusion. It is as if it is illusory. So it's tricky because you can't hear it properly, but just to hear it and know it's really an amazing practice. So as even Prabhupada Rinpoche said, you don't even know what emptiness means, but just to think. What I'm thinking, this is what's happening now, Poddick did this and Poddick said that and he was mean and he left me, and you're trying to work on your mind, you're trying to struggle against these absolute certainties that you think are so true, which are the interpretations of attachment, etc. And you're trying to shake this, and you say to yourself, Robina, maybe it doesn't exist, this whole scenario, in the way it appears to me. Maybe it doesn't. This is already profound. This is shaking the ground of your samsara. So then as you progress, as you lessen the neuroses, lessen the grasping, lessen the rigidity, lessen the grasping of permanence, lessen the grasping of self-existence, then really more things are what they are. There is a cup. It doesn't sort of shake in front of you and you think maybe it turns into a knife. Not like that illusory. Or it doesn't sort of waft off into rainbows. Not like that. It's a cup, simple. But there's more and more understanding of the nature of things as being empty, the nature of things as being dependent and arising, and of being according to karmic appearances. Are we communicating? Okay. So that's the daily practice. Don't grasp at things so strong. Just question your mind. Well, His Holiness so sweetly put it one time when he said, one person asked about how you apply emptiness in daily life. It was so simple. He said, try to see things from a different perspective. Something like our mothers even tell us that. Put yourself in their shoes. It's a profound statement. See things from a different point of view. And that's what rigidity and fundamentalism is. It's the opposite. It's seeing it from my point of view, and that's it. And that's this end of the spectrum. That's samsara. Absolute, fixed. It is that. But that's what's interesting, because as you get more spacious, because you're getting less neurotic and less deluded and seeing things more clear and applying karma, applying emptiness, applying dependent arising, it's not as if the world gets more shaky. A cup is still a cup and a flower is still a flower. It does still fit the definition, but just the way you experience everything changes. You're factoring in more and more and more and more that your mind is labeling, your mind is calling it this. In other words, It's a good example. For the guy, my thinking of example, my friend's in prison, the one who just can't come to terms with his being in prison, so therefore is always suffering. Sweet, kind person, but just can't see it differently, yearning constantly to get out of prison. So going mad, because he can't. He's there for life, unless he bombs the place or the laws in Illinois change overnight. But he's heard about changing his mind, but he just doesn't know how to do it. That's really the fundamentalism, even though he's a sweet guy. That's the fundamentalism. You just can't imagine that it would be different if you changed your mind. If we could just have confidence that if I change my mind, the whole experience would be different. Very hard to see this. When he comes home late, my porrick, and I'm convinced he's looking at that secretary again, you know. Absolutely convinced they're out having a beer. I mean, everything in my mind has made up this story. You know what it's like. You know what you're like. Nothing in the universe will convince me that he didn't do it. Because I've convinced myself because of my pain, my hurt, my neediness, and my jealousy. So it's or put another, no, even better, to say he has been for a beer with the secretary. And then I discovered. At that time, it seems insane and cruel, doesn't it, to say that I'm suffering because of my attachment. Doesn't it? You see, you just can't even, it seems like, how dare you, Buddha, back off, you know. And then to hear that if I were able to see it differently, if I could change my mind, it wouldn't be experienced as pain anymore. It seems almost impossible. We only know because time heals, and we get rid of the hurt, we do see, but it seems to just take time. We can't imagine how there we could do it. Well, my friends in prison are the proof. There's one, both been in together both been in prison at the same time, different prisons, different reasons, both youngish, well now not young, you know, been there for a long time. One has been capable of, you know, he takes the Buddhist practices, he's working on his mind, he does his frustration, he does his practice, he thinks about emptiness, all these things. So the result is, same prison, same garbage dump, but he's a happy guy. He doesn't experience prison as bad, period. And he's on death row. And it's a dump, I tell you, where he lives. A garbage dump. Treated like an animal. His red jumpsuit. No freedom. No decent food. No money. No privileges. It's a garbage life, but he's a happy guy. And the other one, still tortured. So that's proof. It's proof. If you change your mind, things are experienced differently. It's not as if still he's a creep, but I just feel different about him. We think he is still essentially a creep, you know. Essentially he's mean, he cheated on me. And that's, for me, the absolute truth. And that's why when you've got a very stubborn mind and you just believe utterly that he's wrong, it seems inappropriate. What do you mean I should stop being angry? We say. I'm allowed to be angry. And so this is the victim mentality, and I'm not, again, being horrible at all the people who suffer at the hands of horrible people. It's true. It happens. But when you feel you're right to feel sad, you're right to be depressed, you're right to be suicidal because it's their fault, and then you kill yourself because of it. This is on this end of the spectrum. Absolutely concrete mind. I'm not saying it's difficult. Not difficult to change our minds. It's absolutely outrageously difficult. But this is the point. So when we change our mind, it will look different. It won't even be mean porrick anymore. I'll actually have love and compassion for him. Okay, I'll say goodbye to him. Bye, dear. You go live with the secretary. But it won't just be still concrete out there mean porrick, and I've kind of vaguely forgiven him. He'll actually appear different to me. And this is the thing. Because why? Because there's nothing there. It isn't there. That mind hasn't put there. This is the part that seems so problem. Things are not set in stone. Things are not inherent. Things do not exist in and of themselves, or, as they say, from their own side. They don't. They don't. So things really are illusions. So this just takes time. This just takes time. That's all. Quite subtle. Quite hard. Step by step. Yeah. Every single thing, darling. Absolutely. Every single thing. What, sweetheart? What, darling? Every single experience we have. So the thing is that these words we use, it's interesting because I think a lot of in Buddhist psychology there's no term for a state of mind called grief. And if I use Buddhist psychological model, I'd suggest what we mean by grief is a mixture of things. It's a mixture of compassion, sad, and attachment. Attachment is fundamental. Some people who can't get over the grief, that's because of unbelievable attachment. And it's not a criticism. I remember one guy, it was actually, where was I, in Queensland. His past partner had died 5 years before. And he was just like a half a person walking around. He could talk and think of nothing else. That's the depth of attachment. Unable to get past the grief of this loss, this person who made his life worthwhile. That's attachment. And that's the extent to which we have that attachment, which is so normal. We've all got it, so we shouldn't criticize ourselves for it. But if we understand it, it helps us understand why we feel what we feel. Then the grief is unbearable, yeah. And then, of course, it comes along guilt. We think we shouldn't give up loving that person. We feel guilty if we like someone else. We feel guilty if we wake up and don't remember them immediately. So a lot of that's very big too in our world. A lot of guilt. We think we're supposed to feel it. It's right to feel it and never get over it somehow. It's seen as a virtue to always be miserable, always be sad. Do you understand? That's all attachment, girl. That's all attachment, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, right. I mean, they heard it, they saw it. I don't think so. I don't know. Depends on the guys, What? No. What she's referring to is a particular experience I mentioned back in 2003 in New York, during a visit of His Holiness. Richard Gere he was working with us for a while on thinking of working together on this project about prisoners, and then he started to do his own trip. I don't know if he continued, but he invited about 20 former prisoners. American prisoners, black, white, male, female, Puerto Rican, Mexican, the whole works, all of whom had done some kind of meditation in prison. An all-day workshop together, discuss the experience, and then meet His Holiness, come to the teaching. So it was very moving, very wonderful. And some people like me were invited who worked with people in prison. And it was very moving to hear all these people talk about their experiences. And then the point was, they also invited 2 young Tibetan nuns who'd been tortured and sexually abused for a couple of years, I don't know how long, who came and talked about their experiences in prison. Obviously from the perspective of being a Buddhist, they talked about the suffering, the sadness of tears and everything. And I mentioned when I told the story, I think the first thing that was evident to everybody, which is always just puzzling first, you don't know why they weren't angry. We don't know why. You see, because we're so caught up in the philosophy of anger, which is thought and attachment, and because we assume it's normal to have anger and rage when you're treated badly, we just assume it's normal, isn't it? Utterly normal. We never question our right to be angry, and we think it's right and noble to be angry if people abuse you and harm you. Because we don't, from a deeper point of view, as we've been talking all the time, we don't have the view of karma, we don't have the view of cause and effect, we don't have any accountability in that, we don't think we play a role in this thing. As we know, the Buddhist view is very different, so it takes time to see this. So the thing that was evident to all these people was that they weren't angry, so they just, the thing is when people meet the Dalai Lama, they see he's not angry, they just think, isn't he nice? Wow, imagine, how can he be like this? How can he have no anger? We don't analyse why, Do you understand? We don't go into the nuts and bolts of it. Just think, isn't he lovely? He's not angry. We love people who get angry. And we think, isn't he noble and holy? He didn't get angry. But we don't really know why, what his practice is that caused him to not be angry. So the same with the young nun. They just appear very sweet to people, not angry. There might have been a learning from it, but I doubt it. It's very hard for us to extrapolate. Just think, like an accident, they're nice, And of course, and then the point that was quite moving was, because they have, this is when I discussed about karma, because they have the view of karma in the bones of their being as their explanation of the universe. And they said it very quietly, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers, because we knew we'd harmed them in the past. So they heard that was a bit shocking. That is shocking. So whether people can deeply learn from it, I don't know. It takes time to hear it, doesn't it? Put it together. Yeah. So, keeping's delivery. So I think it'd be good now if we can move on to the rest of the Bodhisattva path. What we've been doing the last few days, you people who came today, is we've been talking over the days, different things, all different practices in a random sort of way. But the last day or so we've been going through all these points of the path, presented in a nice orderly way, known in Tibetan as the Lam Rim, putting them all into context, And the last day we've been discussing the compassion wing, if you like, or, they talk about this Lam Rim, this packaging of Buddhist teachings, unique to the Tibetans, particularly Vajrasattva, the Lugpas, our tradition. It's presented, first scope of practices, which is all about abiding by the laws of karma, being a good person, don't harming others, just controlling your body and speech mostly. Then you go to sort of the second scope of teachings where you go more deeply into the mind, where you get to the root of the problem, which is the delusions that are the cause of all the suffering. You uproot those. And then I like to call it junior school and high school, and that's the wisdom wing. And then you go further to university, or the great scope of practice. They call it the Mahayana component, the Bodhisattva path. We've been discussing that the last couple of days. Starting with the practice of equanimity, this recognition that all sentient beings, enemies, friends and strangers, are equal to each other, and we wish to be happy and not suffer. Trying to see the truth of this so clearly. And then go through these various techniques. Well, we've got to with Tonglen, which we discussed yesterday, and which we're discussing here sort of. I think give and taking business. And quoting these 8 verses, which are coming out of that tradition. And, but as a result of all of this, one then accomplishes this bodhicitta. This is the combination of all these 11 techniques that I've been discussing. And this particular approach we're talking here, the tradition of this exchanging self for others, transforming problems, lodrong as they call it, all of this genre of practices coming right back from Atisha, who got it from Salimpa, the tradition, which is the unique one of Tibet, this amazing, radical way of accomplishing love and compassion for others. And then this culminates in what they call great compassion, great love, and then this gives rise to bodhicitta. The love is this, as we've been talking, this bare-bone wish that others be happy, or if you like, a delight when others are happy. That's the meaning of love. And then the meaning of compassion is, may you not suffer, empathy with their suffering, and may you not suffer. This is compassion. So love is related to happiness, others' happiness. Compassion is related to others' suffering. And they're really flip sides of the same coin. You can see this. And then we get to, which we discussed yesterday, this unique level of love and compassion, which is the personal responsibility, the one the Bodhisattva needs to cultivate. It's the courageous attitude that says, you see the suffering, that's compassion. But then you go, what can I do about it? What can I do? If I don't do something, who will? This sense of personal responsibility, this is the one you're trying to develop as a Bodhisattva, on the Bodhisattva path. So the practice of this Tonglen business of giving and taking upon yourself the suffering of others, giving to others your happiness, done in the context of meditation, it basically is an attitude that you bring into your daily life, an outrageous approach to others, so courageous. Then this culminates, finally, in actually the exchange of self for others, where now, truly for you, there's a high realization. Truly for you, others more important. Others more important. They're the forefront of your mind. They are who you think of, like a mother for her precious children. They're in the front of your mind. Now you exist for others. And then you continue your practice as a bodhisattva. From that moment is the first moment of bodhicitta, as they call it. This amazing aspiration, if you like, or wish, or state of mind. We've got 2 parts. One is to never stop helping others, to whatever degree you can. But while you're doing this, you're heading to the main part of bodhicitta, which is, I will never give up working on myself, so I can then become a Buddha. Then I'm qualified for them. These 2 parts, that's bodhicitta. And then you grow and grow and grow in this, go through the stages of development. So the next package of teachings in the Lam Rim that's taught here is the 6 perfections, as they call it, of the Bodhisattva. So this whole, in the world in Buddhism, you've got these different packagings of the teachings, okay? You've got kind of like, what's happened? Oh, immediately. What happened? Oh. What was she saying? Yeah, and then what happened? Okay. Then? Okay, good, this is fine. Okay, good. Thank you very much. This is perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Donna. I'm very happy. Thank you, Jen. I'm very happy you told me. Okay, so right now, we say a little prayer for my friend Alison, who's known her for many years. She's a serious character. She's in the ICU in San Francisco. A critical student of Vajrasattva and a critical musician. Okay. 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 So, her name is Alison. I've known her for many years. She worked for me. She was been in prison. She's been a junkie. She's always had a lot of suffering. And she just never gave up. She struggled and struggled on herself. She gave up being a heroin addict. She worked for us for the prison project. Okay, so you just think of Alison, pray, medicine Buddha. Just thinking, imagine the medicine Buddha, blue, radiant Buddha sitting above her in the hospital in San Francisco in the ICU unit, unconscious. Imagine completely surrounded by the Buddha, sending powerful light to heal her. Powerful, powerful light. No, wrong mantra. What is it called? What is it? Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. Ta Ta Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. Ta Ta Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. Bekasa Bekasa Maha Bekasa Rana Samgari. It's got to be so hard. Yes. Okay. Huh? Outside where? Who, Barry? Oh, Woolwich in London. Okay. Chop them up. Chop the soldier up. Gosh. We'll say prayers for them too. Absolutely. Okay. All this suffering unbearable. The world is too unbearable. That's right. Okay. Okay. So, what were we talking about? Where were we at? What were we saying? What were we saying? Okay, the 6 perfections. Thank you. Let's keep moving on the 6 perfections. So we take these 2 examples. This is before we get to the 6 perfections. This is how bodhicitta kicks in. Okay, and this is like we went this through before. This is the point. We hear about suffering, and then we think this is unbearable. And you read another one, and then Oklahoma, and then this, and then the people are murdered, and then the taxi driver did this, and somebody else, and somebody killing. Every day you read the paper. It's like unbearable suffering. And this is the basis of compassion. So of course we have compassion, and our normal way is this. We'll go, this is unbearable. This is unbearable. We will say that. You just hear this one, hear this one. And they're just 1/1,000,000th of what's happening every single day. And we'll say, this is unbearable. That's compassion. But the trouble is, we then are left with it. We don't know what to do with that. Even if we do say, which is what we should say, which is great compassion, what can I do about it? 99.99% of the time, there is nothing. We can do nothing. So then we either get angry, and we shout and yell and try to find the person to blame, which seems to make us feel better, or we get depressed, don't we? And we despair. So this is the thinking we're attempting to do here on this bodhisattva path. We have the compassion. We have to see the suffering. The more we see, the more it is bliss to the will. which means to be able to not be overwhelmed by it, you have to have the wisdom wind down. The wisdom wind gives you incredible courage. You lessen attachment, you lessen ego, you lessen the neuroses, so you get more brave, more content, more courageous. Now you go to the compassion wind and keep practicing. So you've got to get more courageous and more brave here. So you need to see the suffering. And the more you see the suffering, the more you see suffering. It's like unbearable. And we can just see the tip of the iceberg of the suffering. So it would make it, so what we do is we see the suffering and we go, this is unbearable. That's compassion. So then we have to go to the next one. This is the unique one of the Bodhisattva. Great compassion. What can I do? Then the answer has to be nothing much. So then we don't despair or we don't get angry. This is where bodhicitta kicks in. Literally, this next step is to say, okay, what can I do? Except continue to help others in front of me to the best of my ability. If I can go to stop the Nigerians from killing this, or if I can go and get Alison and stop her from being sick, if I can go to Iraq and stop the war, go please. But we know we can't. Of course, because we have the Buddhist view of karma, they're all doing their own tricks because of their particular thing. It's their thing, you know. So then we have to say, okay, I will keep doing what I can right now, right here, in my house, in Bendigo, keep working on my own mind. I don't have a choice. Lessening attachment because that's why they're all suffering. Lessening my own delusions because that's why they're suffering. So I must give up because look at the suffering it's causing. I have to keep doing that. And I help others to the best of my ability. So you're doing the two wings. And then you keep saying, I will never stop doing that, moving towards my own Buddhahood. I'll keep becoming a Buddha, heading towards being a Buddha. So you basically keep going, doing what you can right now, but have this aspiration to become a Buddha, to never stop working on myself, the wisdom wing, the compassion wing, helping others, but not just doing it kind of like treadmill, moving towards being a Buddha, doing the practices, the way we're talking about the Buddhist path all laid out. Because then you will be qualified. That's where bodhicitta comes in. And that's what gives inspiration, that's what gives courage, that's what gives enthusiasm, that's what gives patience, which we're going to talk about in the next level of practice, the sixth dimension. Are you with me, people? What choice? The point is, what choice do we have? We either give up, go crazy, kill ourselves, kill someone else. They're the options. They're not options. We've been doing that for countless eons, Buddha says. So we have to keep going. Have to keep working on ourselves, find something disgusting, see what the causes are, want to get the hell out of it, and then continue to help others. Like that. Can't you have a break? It's a bit early for a break. Let's have an early break, okay? Have an early break. Half an hour. See you at 10 to 5 and then do a bit more about, I want to go through the 6 perfections, then we'll do the meditation. Okay? Vajrasattva. See you in 10 to 5. Thank you so much, everyone. And then we'll talk about what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow's a special day.